Kakados, Boker Tov, Msechet, Hagigah Daf 26a1. We are just going to start though on the Mishnah and Kapei Amud Bet just to get back into it again. The Mishnah says, Mina modi'im velifnim ne'emanin al kli cheres. From the modi'im and inwards, right? Which means from the modi'im and towards the inside of Yerushalayim. So from Modi'im is a city outside, on the outskirts of Yerushalayim, going inside. They are going to be believed. Who are going to be believed? Remember, we're talking about the Kadarim. Kadarim are the people that they are selling, right? Kli cheres. They are usually Amei Aratzot, and they are going to be believed on Tarat Kli cheres to do with Kodesh, because again, since they're not common in Jerusalem, right? They're not common in Yerushalayim, so therefore they came and they permitted it in order that we should be able to use it right inside of Yerushalayim. Mina modi'im velachutz. However, though from modi'im towards the outside of Jerusalem and ne'emanim, they are not going to be believed. Okay, Kesad. What exactly is the case, right? That we're going to be believed or not believed. Hakadar shumocher kdirot. This kadar that he's selling the kdirot, v'nichnas lifnim min modi'im, and he comes inside of the modi'im, which means right from the inside of the modi'im. Hu hakadar, right? Vehena kdirot, vehena lochin. Right? So he says like this, whether it's the one that's selling the kiddirot, whether it's the one that's selling, right, the only the kiddirot that he brought, and not that he was the one actually made, right, the kiddirot, okay, vehen alochin, or the ones which are the purchasing ones, okay, in all of these cases, he is going to be ne'eman, he is going to be believed, okay, v'yatza, but the second that he came outside of the modim, and he distanced himself from Yerushalayim and on Ne'eman. So basically, they're only going to be believed when they're in this distance, or I don't know how you want to call it exactly, from one place to another. After that, they're not going to be believed. Yeah? No. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned in a Braita. Modi'im, right? Lifamim, pe'amim kilifnim, pe'amim kilachutz. Modi'im, sometimes it's going to be considered like inside, and sometimes it's going to be considered towards the outside. Remember, towards the inside means that it's like Yerushalayim. Towards the outside means that it's not like Yerushalayim. Case said, what is the case? So he says, okay, he says like this. Kadar yotze. Is included or so Kadar yotze. Kadar yotze vechaver nichnas kelifnim. If you have the kadar, which is going outside, which means that he's coming from the right? He's going from the outside, which means it's coming from it's like considered that he's shlifnim modim, and then you've got the chaver, which is nichnas to the modim to the outside. It's considered kelifnim, and therefore you're allowed to purchase from the chaver, which is purchasing the kelim over there. So he says why? Because if you're not going to purchase it now, you won't be able to buy it from him because the kadar already went to the outside where he's not believed anymore, and he's not coming back again. So therefore, obviously, we're talking about a case where the chaver actually sees that the ama'aretz is going into modi'im, because if not, then he's not allowed to buy from him. So if he sees the ama'aretz going into the city of modi'im, remember, we just said from modi'im to the inside was okay. So the inside means towards Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. However, though, what happens if he's already in the city of modi'im? So if right now the chaver comes and he sees, right, that he's going inside the city of modi'im, so therefore it's considered kilifnim. The chaver, the Tamil Chacham could buy it from this ama'aretz that he's going inside, and there's no problem whatsoever. Shnehem nichnasim. If also the kadar and also the chaver are going into the modi'im, okay, so then, or shnehem yotzim, or they're both going out, which means from the inside of modi'im, and they're going into the city, okay, kilachutz. So then it's going to be considered that they're already considered outside of the modi'im. Okay, we're on Kavav Amud Aleph on the top. What does that mean? That means all of a sudden now it gets a different halakha, because now they're considered like they're on the outside. Once they're considered on the outside, you can't purchase anymore from the Amaha Aretz. But in the Echad world, doesn't matter. Abaye comes and he says, Afana Nami Tanina, we also actually learned this in our Mishnah. Hakadar shemachar et kedirot v'nichnas lifnim min hamodim. The kadar which is selling the kedirot and he went into the modim. Ta'ama, he's going to be believed. Ta'ama, the reasoning why is the lifnim min modim, because he's on the inside of the modim. Hamodim itself, lo me'eman, he's not going to be believed. Ema seifa. 1 second, let's see the seifa. The seifa is the exact opposite. Yatsa, if he came out of modim, he's not going to be believed. But Modim itself, he is going to be believed. So then how does it work? Basically like this. We were always talking about from Modi'im to the inside, from Modi'im to the outside. What about the halachot of Modi'im in itself? What about the halachot of Modi'im to itself? So he comes and he says, Ha Modi'im gufa ne'eman, elelav shmamina, but rather this is what it's coming to teach you. It's coming to teach you, kan bekadar hayotze, vechaver hanichnas, kan beshishnein yotzin, o shneim nichrasim. When we're talking about that the kadar is going out of the line where he was allowed to, but the chaver, right, is nichnas to modim from the chutz, and therefore the kadar is going to be believed when he's inside the city. But the other one was talking about they're both going on the outside, or they're both coming to the inside, and therefore since the kadar is ne'eman only in from the inside of modim and not in the city in itself, he's not going to be believed. Shema mina. That's what exactly, right, what we were learning. Okay? Then it says like this. Tana, we learned in a Braita. Ne'emanim b'kli cheres hadakin lakodesh. We are going to be believed. The Amei Haaretz are going to be believed on kli cheres, which are dakin lakodesh, or any type of a tarata kelim. We're talking about small utensils, right, which are going to be used for kodesh, but they're not going to be believed on kli cheres gedolim. Okay? So he says like this. He says, Amar Resh Lakish, says Resh Lakish, v'hu shenitlam biyado achat. What does it mean here? Kli cheres hadakin. Kli cheres hadakin means that you could take it in one hand. That's what it means. It's mamash. It's so small that you could take it in one hand. Rabbi Yochanan says, afilu sheni talim biyad echad. Even if you cannot take it in one hand, it's still considered the dakin, and therefore they're still going to be believed. Okay, because remember the Braita, there's a Tosefta. The Tosefta said mefurash ne'emanim b'kli cheres hadakin lakodesh. Right? Remember there was this was the chumrah of truma more than kodesh. By truma they weren't believed. By kodesh they were believed because it wasn't enough. So therefore they didn't make the decree on the Amei Haaretz. So Amar Resh Lakish, says Resh Lakish, Lo shanu af ela reikanim. What are we talking about? The Chachamim come and they say that the Amei Haaretz are going to be believed on Tarat Kli Cheres Hadakin only to do with rekanim. What does it mean rekanim? Kelim rekanim, utensils which are empty. Aval meleim. But when we're talking about a keli which is maleh, lo, right? The Amei Haaretz is not going to be believed on this Tarat Kelim. Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, afilu meleim, even if it's going to be maleh, right? That's what we're saying. Even if it's the kelim are going to be meleim, right? Going to be full of mashkin and everything else. Vafilu ipakrusoto letocho, and even if the inside of the keli, you have a sudar that an Amei Haaretz is wearing on top of his head, which is v'cheskat tameh midrash. The Chachamim were mikelim, and they said that there's going to be believed, right? That was done with betahara. That's what he's saying. So one more time. Resh Lakish comes and he says, right, that what? That only if it's empty. If it's empty, the Amei Haaretz is believed. If it's maleh, the Amei Haaretz is not believed. Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, right, and then Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, no, even if it's going to be maleh, which means that it's got mashkim and everything, and even if he's got his own clothing inside of it, Chachamim said that he's going to be believed. Right, says the Gemara, Amar Rava, right, and there was a special leniency that they made for the Amei Haaretz to do with kelim by kodesh because there wasn't a big amount. And since there wasn't a big amount, they came and they were lenient. The Amar Rava, the Amar Rava, and Rava says, "Umoder Rabbi Yochanan b'mashkin atzmam shen tmiim." So this is what David just mentioned before. To do with the mashkin itself, it is tameh. We were only talking about the keli. Now he says, "Ve'al titma." Now, one second. How could it be, and I think somebody also asked this yesterday, how could it be that the mashkin is tameh and the kli is going to be taor? How does that make sense? So he says, don't titma, don't be astonished. Shareh, because we found a similar case in Mishnah and Aolo. Lagin. Lagin is basically a kad of etz. Okay, so it's a jug made out of wood. Maleh mashkin, and it's full of liquids, right? And it's going to be on the aliyah. And you have a kedira of cheres, an earthenware utensil, which is on top of the window. You remember with this case where we had on the bottom floor, you had like a window in the middle of the house, and then you had an earthenware utensil, that the outside of the utensil was a chatzitza. And then what happened? The lagin is going to be tameh midrabanan tumat shiva. Why? Tumat shiva, to do with, whenever we're talking about tumat v'tara of a dead person, of a deceased, it's always 7 days. Okay, remember that. So there, why do you know, how do you know it's 7 days? How do you know?
Because it's the deceased.
Paraduma. Paraduma. Remember, whenever we're talking about the tumah of a deceased, you need paraduma. Paraduma is 3 and 7.
3 and 4.
So
there are 7.
What?
Not 3 and 7. 3 and 4.
Yeah. So it says Gemara, One more time. So says the Gemara, now we're understanding that that's how we know that it's too much Shiva, because it's the Bayom HaShlishi or Yom HaShavi, on the third day and the seventh day. So he comes and he says, Lagin, the Maleh Mashkin, so it's full of Mashkin, Dal Lagin, or Tamei Midrabanan, too much Shiva, the Mashkin Tehorim. So you see from here, the Chatzitza of the Kedera helps out to save the Mashkin in the Lagin, but it doesn't help to save the Lagin himself. So just like the Lagin is Tameh and the Mashkin inside is Tahor, so too when I say now the opposite, that now I'm going to say that the Lagin is Tahor and the Mashkin is the Tameh, same thing. Meaning, just like, okay, it's the opposite. Remember, over there, right, the Mashkin was Tahor and the Keli was Tameh. Now it's the opposite. The Keli is Tahor and the Mashkin is Tameh. But it's the same idea. Meaning, don't start being astonished that 1 second you have to have the same halachot, because the rabbis sometimes they did what's called Svei Dinim. You know what Svei Dinim is? Shte Dinim. Which one? Yeah, we're talking about what mime. Mime or yain. Doesn't matter what it is. The Mishnah says, Kavav Amud Aleph 26a1. Hagabayin. Yeah, these are Yisraelim Amei Haaretz. You have a proof here that a Gabai could be Am Haaretz. It's a Mishnah Mefureshet. Yeah? Mishnah Mefureshet. Right? You could have a Parnas Am Haaretz. Which one's worse? Shalayom's worse. Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. Fine, let's go. So Gabaim, Yisraelim Amei Haaretz. So they are the ones that are in charge. Why? Because they were put in charge by the Goyish kings to be in charge, whether it's of taxes or of all these things. Shenichnesu letoch habayit. So they came inside of a house of a chaver to take from him a mashkon keneged achov, which means the religious Jew, right, the Tamil Chacham, which is a chaver, he owes money to the government. Now this Parnas Am Haaretz, right, what does he do? He comes inside the house in order to take a collateral, right? He owes a debt. He has to take a collateral. So he's going to take the collateral. The Chena Ganavim. Yeah, they put them together. Yeah. He says also Ganav. What's a Ganav? A thief. Yeah, we're talking about a thief that they stole, right, from a chaver, a kli cheres. Shechziru et akelim. That they returned that which they stole. So imagine right now you have a thief and they returned that which they stole. It happens once in a while. You have it. Yeah. Usually 95% of the time you don't have that. Once in a while you have that. Huh? So says the Gemara, Ne'emanim lomar, they are believed to say, Lo naganu. We did not touch them, and they are tahor. So imagine these people, they're believed to say. Okay? So he says, but again, this is only for Kodesh. For Kodesh and not for Teruma. Okay? That's what it says over here. Remember, now we're going to all these Mishnayot are going to the Chumrah of the from the Kodesh to the Teruma to the Kodesh. Okay? Which ones? Yes. Ubirushalayim ne'emanim ala Kodesh. In Yerushalayim, the Am Haaretz is going to be believed on the Kodesh, right? Uveshat regel af ala Teruma. And on Shat regel, he's going to be believed even for the Teruma. Okay, says the Gemara. The Gemara says, Urmini, we have a contradiction. Hagabayim shenichnesu letoch habayit, habayit kulo tameh. The contradiction is there's a Mishnah and Tarot. The Mishnah and Tarot says that the Gabayim, these Parnasim, that they go inside of the house of a person, the entire house is tameh. So how do you tell me here that they are believed to say that lo naganu, we didn't touch anything? Here it's written mefurash in the Mishnah and Alot, right? In the Mishnah and Tarot, sorry, that the entire house is tameh. So answers the Gemara, la kashya tzar question, ha deika nochri ba'adayhu. Here we're talking about a goy came in with him. Ha deleka nochri ba'adayhu. And here he didn't have a goy that came in with him. Today was going to the Mishnah. Im yesh nochri ma'en nemanim nomar lo nichnas. If right now they have a goy with them, they're believed to say that we didn't go inside. But they're not allowed to believe to say that we went inside, but we didn't touch. Right? Basically, what's happening is that once there's somebody with them, so now all of a sudden they're much more afraid. Remember that usually when people are with them, they're much more afraid because all they need is one person just to tell over the secret, and they've had it. So now they're much more afraid of what they're doing. Okay?
So now we trust a goy for Tara?
There's the Gemara. So he says, okay, so even if the goy is with him, so why is he going to be believed? At the end of the day, you think the goy understands the Tumah V'Tara? You think a goy is going to come and understand, he touched, didn't touch, oh, now he just contaminated it, didn't, the goy doesn't understand a word. Remember, this is talking about a Yisrael. The Parnas was a Yisrael. It wasn't a goy. Right? The goy came in with the Yisrael. Okay? So the Gemara answers Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yochanan and Lazar. Chadamar, one of them says, Emat nochri alehen. What does that mean? They're afraid that maybe the nochri will come, and if they're not going to check well inside the house, so therefore it's going to be a problem. So because of that, they have to be makpid to check the entire house. So therefore he touched everything. So because of that, they're not going to be believed if they say that they went inside and they didn't check. Meaning like this, if he's got the goy with him, that means the goy is like a shomer. The goy now will go back to the king and say, listen, you have this Jew that he's the Parnas. Right? He's not a Parnas Ne'eman. Why is he not a Parnas Ne'eman? Look, he didn't check well the house. So for what happens, the Jew has to go in and he has to check every single utensil to try to find a collateral, to try to find something in order to say, listen, this is a pikadon, a mashkon, that you're going to pay back your debt. So therefore, the second that they say that they went into the house, they're not believed to say that they didn't touch. Because that means, because he's afraid of the goy, he has to touch everything. One of them says, emat malchut alehen. Right? They're afraid, right, that they're going to, that the nochri will come and he'll be malshin, and therefore they're going to come and they're going to look into the entire house. So the Gemara is going to ask, what's the difference between the two different opinions? It sounded like this. One of them said he was afraid of the goy. Another one says he was afraid of the goy because he's going to snitch. He's going to tell the king. It's the same thing. So he says, no. The difference between them is nochri she'eno chashuv. A nochri that is not chashuv, he cannot punish himself, the Jew, the parnas, but he could snitch. So that's the difference between them. Meaning, if it's because that it's a goy chashuv, so the goy chashuv himself could come and punish the Jew. Why? Because he's a minister, he's something else. So then you're afraid of the goy. But let's say it's a goy that's not chashuv. So you're right, he can't do it, but he could still snitch. So because of that, that's a different thing. Two dots. Yeah, v'chena gannavim shechziru et hakelim. Or meaning we have a contradiction. Haganavim shenichnesu toch bayit eno tameh ela mekom drisat reglei ganavim. He says when ganavim come into the house, the only thing which is tameh, that's where the ganavim went. Meaning wherever they walked around, that's what's going to be tameh. So says the Gemara, Amar of Pinchas mishmed de Rava. Says Rabbi Pinchas, the name of Rava, keshasu teshuvah. We're talking about where the ganavim, they did teshuvah, and that's when they gave back the utensils. So since they're already coming, they're doing teshuvah, they're not going to lie to do with the tara. You understand? They're not going to lie to do with tara. Why are they not going to lie? Because if they're already doing teshuvah, you know, I mean, if they didn't do teshuvah, so then maybe like what David said, they're ganavim. They're going to continue. What do they care? But if they already did teshuvah, what? No, they do a half of teshuvah. They're already returning it. They want to be truthful with themselves. So they're going to say, you know what? They also touched this utensil or the other utensil, whatever it is. And that's why we actually said, shechziru et hakelim. Right? What does that mean? The ganavim that they returned, right? Which one? Yes. And therefore it says, shechziru et hakelim. So the Mishnah could have changed and says, v'chana ganavim ne'emanim. But why did it say that shechziru et hakelim? So means obviously they did teshuvah, and that's why they were machzir et hakelim. Right? Shema mina. Next two dots. So Yerushalayim ne'emanim al kodesh. Remember that in Yerushalayim, right, the Amei Haaretz are going to be believed on Taharat. In Yerushalayim, they're going to be ne'emanim al Taharat HaKodesh. Tana, we learned in the Braita. Ne'emanim al Kli Cheres gasin laKodesh. They are going in Yerushalayim. They're going to be believed even on Kli Cheres, which are gdolim, which are gasin, which are very big and towards the Kodesh, and therefore the Chavarim could buy it from them. So v'chol kach lama. Why were they so lenient, right, in Kli Cheres and Yerushalayim? So says the Gemara, she'en osim kivshonot b'Yerushalayim. Basically, in Yerushalayim, they never used to make these, how do you call them? Pottery houses, so like, you know, like factories of pottery, because of the hot, you know, the big smoke and everything, the kishonot, it would make the black, what's it called? Gilds? Kilns.
Kilns.
Okay, so kilns. So kilns. They don't make these things in Yerushalayim because of the smoke and all these things. So because of that, because it says over here in the footnotes, it's a Gemara Masechet Baba Kama, it was an institution, because they didn't want that it would blacken the walls of Yerushalayim or the walls of the Beit HaMikdash. So because of that, no chimneys, right? With all these, black, they didn't want to. So now if they don't have that in Yerushalayim, so that means they had to import everything. Since they had to import everything, it was very difficult to find, right? If they have everything locally made, so then fine. The second they have to import, so that because of that, they went and they were lenient, right, on certain utensils of kli cheres in order that they didn't have any problems. Ubishata regel afal v'truma. During the time of the regalim, shalosh regalim, they're going to be believed even on teruma. How do we know these words? Yeshua Levi says, Yeshua Levi, Demakar, it says in the pasuk, Vayasef kol ish Yisrael el ha'ir keish echad chaverim. What does it mean? They're going to gather together. Kol ish Yisrael el ha'ir, to the city. Keish echad chaverim. Hakatuv asan kulan chaverim. The Torah made everybody chaverim during this time, right? Which means that when all Bnei Yisrael are together during the Chagim, all of a sudden everybody are chaverim. Okay, and therefore that's why even an Amaretz becomes like a chaver, and therefore he's going to be believed even to do a truma during the time of the regel. Shalosh regalim. Next Mishnah, Kavav Mudalef Mishnah. Hapoteach et chavito. If somebody's going to open up a chavit to sell wine in Yerushalayim, v'matchil b'isato, or if somebody's going to come and they're going to start kneading, right, with their isa, al gavar regel, on gavar regel. Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, so remember, two different things. Either he opens up the barrel and he starts selling the wine in Yerushalayim during the regel, or if you're going to come and you're going to start selling bread, right, on the regel, whatever's left over, Rabbi Yehuda says, Yigmor, you could sell, and it's still going to be tahor. That means basically the fact that the Amaretz came and he started selling these things beforehand. Sorry, here we're talking about a chaver. The chaver came and he opened up the barrel of wine, or he was the one that started selling it. So therefore, whatever is left over, he could continue selling it. The Chachamim say, lo yimor, you cannot sell it. Why? Because once the Amaretz touched it, it becomes mitamel mafreya, which means like this. It's like a magic, right? And that's why we say that the entire thing is the Rabbanan, right? It's like a magic that during the time of the regel, all of a sudden, kulam tehorim. There is a logic to that, obviously. You understand? Everyone comes with a midash, we all want to become pure. So even Amaretz, all of a sudden he'll go to the mikveh, he'll do this, he'll do that. Why? You know, it's a certain name. Yes, exactly. There's something there. You understand? There's something there. Okay, fine. Now all of a sudden, what happens is it finishes the chag, right? It finishes the shalosh regalim, right? It finishes that regel, and now there's leftovers. So now even the chaver, according to the first shita of Rabbi Yehuda, right? According to the Chachamim, they cannot sell it. Right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, yes, he could finish it off. It was once you started Betara, you could finish off. According to Chachamim, no. Why? Because for sure the Amaretz touched it during the regel. Now during the regel, we had a special deen that the Amaretz was like a chaver. So therefore we didn't contaminate with it. But right after the regel, all of a sudden now it goes retroactively, that which he touched becomes tameh. And therefore once he finishes the regel, that's it. The chaver cannot even finish off the selling, right, of the utensils. Why? Because that's it. We already made it contaminated, and therefore it's going to be a problem. So Yativ Rabbi Yami Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Kil'ad Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So once happened that Rabbi Yami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha were sitting in by the mirpeset, by the balcony of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Patachad v'aman. One of them went and they opened and they started saying, and they said like this: Maush yanichen al regel acher. Can you now come and keep it for the next regel? Meaning, imagine right now I just open up the barrel, right? And it's Pesach, let's say, right? Can I now what did we just say? According to Shitat Chachamim, I cannot sell it anymore. After the regel, chalas, nigmar sipur. So what do? Close the barrel, wait for Shavuot, and Shavuot I'll open it up again. I'll sell it there. Can I do it from one regel to another regel? And all of a sudden, again, we have the same status quo. So Amma le'idach, the other one told them, Yada kol mimashmeshim ba, da'ata amarta nichen al regel acher. Says, I don't understand you. He says, everyone comes and they start touching whether it's wine or food. Meaning, how are you going to come and tell me? Meaning, wine and food, right? Wine and food, people... No. It means that everybody comes and they start eating from wine and drink. If you have a bottle of wine, right, you go to the fridge of the Bet Knesset, right, you're going to find a bottle of wine. You're going to tell me... One second. Are you going to tell me that nobody's going to touch it right now? If you have something open up in the Bet Knesset, right? Chavit. Or... the breads, kikarot shel balabait, right? You're going to tell me people are not going to touch it? In 2 seconds they touch it, right? Here they come, so same thing. If everybody touches it, you're going to keep it in your house. You're going to say, no. I really right, Bemet, I'm not really allowed to touch it. But I'm going to leave it over for Shavuot. You think that from now until Shavuot it's going to survive? Yeah, you think? Yeah, so he says, he says, Amalei comes and he says, he says, 1 second. And also now during the entire regel, not everybody was touching it. Everyone was touching it until now. He says, yeah, but 1 second. Amalei, right? He comes and he says, right? He comes and he says like this. He says, can you compare both cases? I understand until now. Tumat amaaretz baregel, rachmanat yara. The tumat amaaretz in the regel, the Torah was the one that permitted it. Elahashta But now, right after the regel, temeahi, which means like this. Where did we learn that during the regel, the person is going to be tahor? The Torah, Shofetim, right? It's part of the Bible, right? From the Torah says, "Vayasef kol ish Yisrael el ha'ir, ki ish echad chaverim." Everybody becomes like one of the chaverim. So it's a pasuk in the Torah, which means the Torah is the one that's coming and saying that a person, right? Mefurash in the Torah, that it's like that a person is going to become tahor. But he says, but now everybody's tameh, meaning the Amaretz is going to be tameh now. So what are you comparing shata regel and not shata regel? Shata regel, the Torah said everyone is tahor. Lo shata regel, everybody's going to be tameh. I'm talking about obviously the ameh aratzot. So answers the Gemara, right? 1 second. So says the Gemara, he says, Neima Katanai. What do we actually say? It's a machlok Katanai. What's a machlok Katanai? The Tani Chada Yinichel Regel Acher. The Tana Idach Lo Yinichel Regel. It's actually a machlok Katanai. One Tana said, leave it over until the next Chag. The other Tana said, don't leave it over until the next Chag. My love Tanai is another machlok Tanaim. If according to the Chachamim, are you allowed to sell it now in the next Chag? Meaning our Mishnah just said, don't finish selling it off. But it didn't tell you right now, are you allowed to leave it over to the next Chag? So maybe Be'emet if it's a Machloket Tanaim, so there's a Machloket Tanaim. Says the Gemara, no. Hadik Tani Rabbi Yehuda, the Hadik Tani, right, sorry, Hadik Tani Yani Chena, the Rabbi Yehuda. The one that said that you can leave it over for the next Chag is Shitat Rabbi Yehuda. And that which we said, Lo Yani Chenu L'Regel Acher, that is Shitat Chachamim. Which means, what does it mean that according to Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, Yigmor means doesn't mean that it's only just you could sell it finishing, you finish off the bottle, as they say, right? Because you started with tara, you finish off the bottle, right? But rather, what does it mean? It means afterwards as well. Remember, according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, it's very, very difficult. You know how difficult this is to control, right? How many times does it happen whether you could have a person, right? You go into the store, no, this is from wine that I already opened it up. And all of a sudden you have another bakbuk. No, this is wine from that I already opened it up. And it's very, very difficult to control because every single time I'm going to come in, I'm going to look at the tarikh. You're going to say, no, but I opened it up beforehand. And this is the leftovers, right? Sometimes it happens, even mechilat chametz. You know how many times it's happening? It's chametz shavala pesach. No. This is the one that I had before. You understand? Like, I had it before, and then I sold it. You understand? Not that it's a new merchandise and it's within 30 days and all these things. So it's very difficult to control. But that's what the Rabbi Yehuda was saying. Chachamim saying you're not allowed to at all. So he comes and he says, so why don't we just say that the one that says that you can leave it over for the next Chag is Rabbi Yehuda. The one that says you can't leave it over until the next Chag is going to be Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, but is it logical? He says, Har Rabbi Yehuda yigmor ka'amar. When it says yigmor, it means immediately after the regel. It doesn't mean yigmor means finish it off in the next regel. So that's not the explanation. So he says, Elahadik tani lo yenichena. The one that says don't leave it over until the next Chag is Rabbi Yehuda. The one that says you could leave it over until the next Chag is going to be Rabbanan. So what does it mean, lo yanichena? What does it mean then, don't leave it over? It's the exact opposite of what we would have thought. He says, what does it mean, don't leave it over? She'en tzarich lanicha. You don't have to leave it over until regel haba, but you're allowed to sell it immediately after the regel, just like shitat Rabbi Yehuda. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're allowed to come and you're allowed to actually sell. This is now the next Mishnah on the page. Okay, there's going to be another one after this as well. So this is the second last Mishnah on the page. Mishavar regel. Once the regel passes by, ma'avirin al ta'arat hazara. The Kohanim used to come and they used to be ma'avirim on all the kelim in the Bet HaMikdash. They used to do tevilah on them. Why? In order to make sure that they were pure. So imagine, right after the regel, they used to come. They used to do mamash tevilat kelim on everything. They used to do everything. The Kohanim had a big job. They just finished the Chag. You think they were off now? No, now they have to purify everything that was there. So he says, Avar regel yom shishi. What happens now if it finishes on Friday? Now Friday, there's no time to start coming and start doing all these things. So lo yom avrim, they wouldn't do it because of Kol Shabbat. And then they would do it obviously because they were busy on Shabbat. And then they would do everything after the Shabbat. They would do it on Sunday and continue there. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af yom chamishi, not also on Thursday, which means that if you finish the regel on Thursday, also they wouldn't do it on the Thursday because of Kol Shabbat. They would wait until the next Sunday. Why? Because the Kohanim are not going to be available in order to do all these things, because they're busy with the things of Shabbat. Tana, we learned in a Braita. Why? Because the Kohanim are not going to be prunim, they're not going to be available to take out the deshen, which means since they were taking care of all the deshen, which was on the entire regel, because basically during the entire regel, right, they wouldn't take off the deshin, so it would look like there's a lot of things coming, and there was a kavod of the mizbeach. So what happened was after the Chag, they would remove all the ashes from the deshin. So they would remove all the deshin, which is the ashes, from the mizbeach. So because of that, they were so busy doing that, they didn't have time now also to do that, plus also to start purifying all the utensils. So because of that, they couldn't purify the utensils until the Sunday. Last Mishnah on the page. How would they purify everything? So he says, right? They used to come and they used to do tevilah on the utensils on the Bet HaMikdash that were there during the regel. They used to tell the Kohanim Amei Haaretz in the regel, right? Hizeharu, be very careful. Kavav Amubet, yeah, be very, very careful. Shelo tigeu b'shulchan, that do not touch the shulchan, right? Why? Right? Because basically, if they would come and they would touch the shulchan would become tameh. Okay. Now, obviously, if it did become tameh, they would have to do tevilah. Right? But in our case, it's very, very difficult because it's always written that they always had lifanai tamid. They always had a command that they always needed a bread lifanai tamid. So therefore, since they always needed that, they always used to try to tell the Amei Haaretz, be very careful, right? Because we don't want to do the tevilah on the shulchan. So that's one utensil that we don't want to do the tevilah on. So they would tell the Kohanim Amei Haaretz, right? You understand? Amei Haaretz, be careful, right? Don't start being metameh this the shulchan. Okay? Kol hakelim shayu b'mikdash yesh lahem shniim u'shlishim sheim nitmeu harishonim yaviu shniim tachtehem. All the utensils in the Bet HaMikdash, they always had a substitute. They had always another utensil, which was a replica, which they were able to all of a sudden boom and swap. Okay, and then they would use that until they would get back to the original one. But the shulchan only had one. That's what it says in the footnote over there. If you see it, meaty and everything else. So therefore, that's why it only had one. I guess because of this concept of lifanai tamid. That's what he says, right? Which one? No, that's what he's saying. He's saying that there was only one shulchan. So the shulchan was special since it always had to be lifanai tamid. If they would make a replica, so then they wouldn't be careful. They would have to switch it, and then it would be a problem. So because of that, right?
A huge shulchan, right?
That is the Gemara. Okay, the Gemara says, sorry, we were in the Mishnah still. All of the kelim that were in the Bet HaMikdash, they need tevilah and herev shemesh after the regel, except for mizbach hazam, mizbach hanechosh, except for the mizbeach, the mizbach hazahav, right? Except for the mizbach hazam, mizbach hanechoshet, because they are considered like the ground. Meaning the two mizbeachs, whether we're talking about the outer mizbeach and inner mizbeach, since they are connected to the ground, it's like the ground. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Chachamim omrim neshem mitzupin. It says over here, no, because they are actually going to be coated. What do you mean coated? Let's see. Okay, and the Gemara is going to explain. So says the Gemara. We learned in the Braita. Here they added the word menorah. It wasn't only the shulchan. They told them to be careful of the shulchan and the menorah. Says the Gemara. Right? Why? Because obviously they couldn't do it, which we're going to see in a minute. So he says, Tana Didan, and our Tana, my Tana, why didn't we learn the menorah? He says, because by the shulchan, right, it's written lefanai tamid, that the shulchan had to be always there. So therefore, if you're going to come and you're going to impurify it, you would have to remove it. So because of that, it's going to be problematic. But the menorah is not written tamid. So the fact that it's not written tamid, okay, you have to take it out and do tevilah and bring it back. That's not the end of the world. You understand? Meaning it's not the, you understand? So there's no problem of it. Okay, fine. So says the Gemara, ve'idach, and the other Tana, kevan dichtiv, since it's written ve'tan menorah nochach hashulchan, that the menorah is opposite the shulchan, so it's like kilu that it's also written tamid by the menorah. Because it's always written that the menorah is always by the shulchan. So if the shulchan always has to be there, because it's written tamid, so for the menorah also has to be there, because it's written kilu, it has to be by the shulchan. The idach and the other opinion, he says, he says, no, it doesn't mean that it's written tamid that it always has to be there. It's just telling you where is the place of the menorah. Meaning, I don't know where the menorah is. So now I know that the menorah is always opposite the shulchan, but it doesn't have to tell you that it always has to be there. So therefore, it doesn't have to be there. So says the Gemara, 1 second. The tape will play. Why don't I just say that even if the Amei Haaretz is going to touch the shulchan, it's not going to be tameh, the kli etz asur lenachatu, because it's a kli etz which is made, which is kavua mekomo. That's what it says over here. What does that mean? The shulchan is not heavy to carry it, but it's made lenachat. Lenachat means it's made to use it in a fixed place, which they don't carry it from one place to another place. So because of that, he comes and he says, so the Gemara says that a kli etz, which is made lenachat, it is not called kli etz that's lenachat lo metameh. It's not going to become tameh. So my tama, what's the reasoning? Says the Gemara, but it says in the pasuk, v'chol asher yipol alav mehem b'motam yitma mikol kli etz oveged or sak dunya de sak beina. We need like a sackcloth. Just like a sack is mitaltel malev rekam, it's going to be carried whether it's full or empty. So to anything which is going to be mitaltel malev rekam. So therefore, the shulchan which is made kavua, it's not going to be mekabel tumah. So therefore, what do I care now that the amaretz is going to come and touch the shulchan? Even if he doesn't touch the shulchan, it's not going to make it tameh. So it says the Gemara, hainami mitaltel malev rekam. It is considered mitaltel malev rekam. Why? Like Resh Lakish. The Amar Resh Lakish was Resh Lakish says, "Medikli was in the pasuk al shulchan tahor." He says, "Miklal shu tameh." If it says tahor, it's mashma that it's tameh. Amai why? Kli etza sulinachad. He says, "Kli etza sulinachad." Then mekabel tumah. He says, "Ela melamed shayu magbiin oto marim bo leole reglim." They used to pick it up and they used to show it to all the ole regalim with the lechem apanim. Remember that the ole regalim were on the outside of the echal. The shulchan is inside the echal. You have the ulam and then you have the echal. So therefore, they had to come and they had to pick it up and they had to show it, right, to the table. They used to show it to the people. So the fact that they used to come and pick it up and then show it to the people, that was already considered these to be metalteloto. And they used to say, look at how precious you are in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kesiluko kesiduro. Just like they're going to remove the breads. It's like mamash, just like they put it. They're like mamash, it was fresh. As if like mamash, you just put it right now. Right? That's it. So right, come, yeah, mamash, fresh. The Amar of Yoshua Levi says, Yoshua Levi, Nes Kadol Nasab Lechem Apanim, there was Nes Kadol Lechem Apanim, Kesiduro Kach Siluko, Shneimar Lasum Lechem Chom Biyomin Lakecho. What does that mean? That it was mamash, the exact same freshness, everything was the same thing, just like from the beginning. So therefore, that's why he says, they used to tell the Ma'aretz, be careful not to touch it, because it was a kli that could become tameh. So says the Gemara, fine. The table mishum tzipui. What about the tzipui? It was mitzupeh zahav. You had gold on the outside. You're right. The inside was made out of wood, but it's mitzupeh zahav. Mitzupeh zahav means that on the outside it's going to be a gold plated, no, gold covering, whatever it is we call it, yeah, gold coated. So he says, Vatnam. We learned in the Mishnah, hashulchan v'adul paki. When we're talking about a shulchan or the dul paki, it's like a folding chair. Shenifchatu, that now became. That now it broke basically and you can't use it anymore. Or you covered it with marble. And you left enough place that you're able still to put cups on it. Tameh. The Yehuda says, we're talking about a place which you're putting the chatichot of, whether it's basar, lechem. So it's not just enough stam that you put kosot. It has to be enough of a place it is. So he says, in such a case, why does Resh Lakish come and say that the shulchan is mekabel tumah because he used to show it to the people? Even without that, it should be tameh. Why? Because it's what? Because it's tzipui zahav. Meaning you're coming and telling me it shouldn't become tameh because of the wood. I'm telling you it should become tameh because of the zahav, not because of the wood. Tzipui zahav. The chitim, and if you're going to tell me, shane atzeh shitim dechashiv lo batre. Shulchan, the shulchan is made out of atzeh shitim. So that's different because it's not going to be batel to the zahav.
So it's not made of gold 100%.
No, the outside is made of gold.
Okay, it's not
right?
made of gold 100%.
No, not 100%. Right? The it's plated, gold plated. So he says, Hani chale Resh Lakish. This is good according to Resh Lakish. Damar lo shanu ela bekli aslagim habayim midinat hayam. This is good according to him that he says we're talking about kelim which are made out of aslagim, which is basically type of woods, which are like a very cheap woods that are not chashuv, and therefore they put the tzipui. Aval kli meschim. He says bakli masmim. Lo batel, but it's not going to be batel. Why? Because it's very expensive wood. Shapi, then it's going to be good. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, Damar, Afil B'klei Masim, right? Masmim Nami Batle. Mike, what are you going to say? Meaning like this: if you're going to tell me in a Chanami that we're talking about a very cheap wood, so then it's going to be batel, right? Cheap wood, batel, and then you put tzipui zahav. I understand. But if you're going to tell me it's going to be very, very expensive wood, so then it's not batel. But he says, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, even if it was expensive wood, it's still going to be right batel. So he says, so then what are you going to say then? If you're going to tell me now. Kan betzipui haomed, the kan betzipui shen omed. Maybe by the shulchan we're talking about tzipui which is omed, which means it's stuck to its place through like nails and things like that, and that's why it's going to be batel to the tzipui. But if the tzipui is not going to be with nails, right, and basically you could take away the tzipui, so then it's not going to be batel, and that's what it makes sense. So he says, Haba min Resh Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. This was actually the question of Resh Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. It says over there, "Betzipui haomed or betzibur shel moed. We're talking about tzipui omed or no omed. Bechofet lebizbazav. We're talking about that you're going to be right. It says here you're going to be tzipui mechaseh the miskeret. You're covering the border. Or sheno chofel lebizbazav, or it's not covering the border. Amalei, and he says loshna. Doesn't matter whether it's omed or not omed. Loshna bechofet lebizbazav loshna. According to him, there's no difference. Meaning, according to Rabbi Yochanan, remember, this was the question that Rabbi Shakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan is coming and is saying that according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's always going to be mekabel tuma, even if it's kavua mekomo, and even if they're going to, all these things, it's always mekabel tuma. So it's mekabel tuma. So answers the Gemara, el hashane shulchan. The shulchan is different than everything else. Kavzai Amud Aleph on the top, right? Why? Terachmana karya etz. The Torah called it wood. Tichtiv hamizbeach etz. Shalosh amot gavoa veorko shtayim amot miktzutav lo vekilotav etz. It kept on calling it etz. From the fact that in Yechezkel it kept on calling it etz, and it says Vaydaber elai ze hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem. This is the table, right, which is in front of Hashem. This is where we get our pasuk from, right before Birkat Hamazon. So he says over here, since the Torah is calling it mifurash etz, it's called etz even though it's tzipui zahav. And that's why we're saying that the only because they used to pick it up and show it to the Olei Regalim, that's why it's mekabel tuma. Because if it wasn't mekabel, meaning if it wasn't shown to the Olei Regalim, that means even though it's tzipui zahav, but the Torah is calling it etz. What? The zahav is batel. Zahav is batel because it's called etz. Since the Torah calls it etz, it's etz. If it's etz, it's tzui lenachat. It's tzui lenachat. No problem. Okay. Very good. We continue to remember.